The twin moons of Orvath hung low in the mauve sky, their pale light casting an eerie glow over the dense, thorny jungle of Vexar Prime. Trees with sapphire leaves whispered in the cool breeze, as unseen creatures chirped and howled. Amidst the verdant chaos, Zach Solon adjusted the straps of his exploration pack and muttered, "I'm telling you, Cortana, this planet is a goldmine of crazy." The AI embedded in his wrist communicator replied with its characteristic monotone. "Zach, the term goldmine of crazy is not a recognized classification for unexplored planets." "Sure it is, it's just one of mine," Zach replied, ducking under a hanging vine that emitted a faint bioluminescent hume. Vexar Prime was teeming with life forms humanity hadn't cataloged yet, and Zach, a self-proclaimed xeno-naturalist with a hint of adrenaline junkie, had been thrilled to win the survey contract. But what drew him deeper into the wilderness was the rumor of a guardian beast, a creature so fearsome that the local Drevlith species worshipped it as an avatar of cosmic destruction. According to the scattered Drevlith legends Zach had translated, the beast protected a vast expanse of jungle and had never been captured or killed. Most avoided it entirely. Naturally, Zach saw it as a challenge. He was trudging through ankle-deep moss when the jungle fell silent. The shift in atmosphere was immediate and oppressive. No chirps, no rustling leaves, nothing but the faint rustle of his jacket. Zach stopped, scanning the area with heightened awareness. "Ortana," he whispered, "what's going on?" "I am detecting thermal signatures moving in a synchronized formation approximately 50 meters to your west." Zach drew his plasma machete, more out of habit than fear. Synchronized formation, huh? Sounds like some critters are about to throw me a welcome party." The ground trembled slightly as a shadow slithered through the foliage. Then it emerged. A hulking quadruped with a shimmering obsidian coat that rippled like liquid starlight. The creature's golden eyes glowed with an intelligence that was unnerving, and its mouth curled into what looked like a sneer, revealing rows of translucent, razor-sharp teeth. This was no ordinary predator. This was the golden beast. "Whoa," Zach breathed, taking an instinctive step back. "Now that's what I call a big boy." The beast stood over 8 feet tall at the shoulder, with limbs that ended in clawed, talon-like appendages. A long, whip-like tail flicked behind it, tipped with a series of bioluminescent spines that pulsed like a heartbeat. The Drevlith had failed to mention one detail. This thing was as majestic as it was terrifying. It let out a low growl that resonated in Zach's chest, a sound both threatening and oddly questioning. Okay, Zach said, raising his hands. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just a tourist with a machete. You know how it is." The beast's golden eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Zach thought it was about to pounce. But then, inexplicably, it stopped, tilting its massive head as if puzzled. "Ortana," Zach whispered. "Any suggestions?" "Run," she replied dryly. Ignoring her, Zach crouched slightly and rummaged in his pack, retrieving a ration bar. He held it out, feeling absurd. "Here, buddy. Peace offering. You like peanut butter and algae?" The beast sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring. To Zach's utter astonishment, it stepped closer, lowering its head. The jungle's apex predator, a being feared and revered by an entire species, was inspecting a snack bar like a curious puppy. "Yeah, that's right," Zach said softly, trying to keep his voice calm. "It's just food. No poison, no tricks." The beast sniffed again, then opened its cavernous mouth and snapped up the bar. For a long moment, it chewed noisily, golden eyes fixed on Zach. And then it did something Zach would never forget. It wagged its tail. Slowly, tentatively, but unmistakably, it wagged. "Well, I'll be damned," Zach said, lowering the machete. "You're just a big old dog, aren't you?" The creature huffed, a sound that might have been indignation. It turned abruptly and began to stalk away, its tail flicking dismissively. But as it disappeared into the jungle, Zach felt a strange pang of disappointment. "Ortana," he said, standing up straight, "mark this spot. I think I just made a friend." "Friendship is a statistically unlikely outcome," Cortana replied. "However, I have logged the coordinates." As Zach made his way back to his temporary camp, he couldn't shake the image of the beast's golden eyes, or the odd connection he'd felt in that brief encounter. What was it about the creature that made it so approachable? And why did he feel compelled to find it again? Zach chuckled, shaking his head. What's the worst that could happen? Far behind him, in the shadows of the jungle, the guardian beast watched. Its tail swayed lazily, and, for the first time in eons, it wondered if it had underestimated the strange, fragile creature called human. The next morning, Zach woke up to the sound of rustling leaves and distant, guttural cries from the jungle's wildlife. He yawned, stretched, and checked his surroundings. His camp, a simple pop-up shelter reinforced with light carbon fiber poles, had held up well overnight, though a few curious claw marks on a nearby tree suggested something had been sniffing around. "Ortana," he muttered, still half asleep. "Any signs of our new friend?" "Thermal scans show no immediate presence of the guardian beast," the AI replied. "However, local fauna appear to have cleared out within a 1-kilometer radius." Zach smirked as he packed his gear. "Looks like the big guy left an impression. Can't blame them." The encounter from the day before lingered in his thoughts. Zach had met plenty of alien creatures in his years of exploration, but none had been as enigmatic or as oddly endearing as the guardian beast. Something about its golden eyes and almost dog-like curiosity had sparked a peculiar determination in him. He had to find it again. Slinging his pack over his shoulder, Zach struck out into the jungle. He wasn't entirely sure where to start, but he had a theory. The Drevlith stories spoke of the guardian beast protecting a sacred grove deep within the jungle, a place where their ancestors believed life itself began. If the beast was tied to that legend, it might frequent the area. "Ortana! Give me a heading," Zach said, navigating through a maze of tangled roots and hanging vines. "There is a geological depression 5.2 kilometers northeast of your current position," the AI replied. "It matches the description of the Drevlith sacred grove." "Northeast it is," Zach said, forging ahead. The trek was grueling. The jungle's dense undergrowth fought him at every step, and more than once he had to use his plasma machete to cut through vines as thick as his arm. Massive insectoid creatures buzzed around him, their iridescent wings catching the light. One of them, a beetle the size of a dog, landed near his path and clicked its mandibles menacingly. "Easy there," Zach muttered, sidestepping the creature. "I'm not on the menu." The hours crawled by, and Zach's initial excitement began to wane. Sweat soaked his shirt, and his legs ached from the relentless hike. Just as he was about to consider turning back, he broke through the foliage into a clearing. The sight took his breath away. The sacred grove was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Towering crystalline structures jutted from the ground, refracting sunlight into a dazzling array of colors. A shallow pool of water lay at the center, its surface shimmering with a strange, golden light. Surrounding the grove were ancient, twisted trees, their roots forming intricate patterns on the ground. "Ortana," Zach whispered. "This is it, isn't it?" "Affirmative," the AI replied. "This location matches Drevlith descriptions of the sacred grove, with a 92% accuracy. Zach approached the pool cautiously, marveling at its unnatural glow. He knelt by the edge and dipped his fingers into the water. It was warm, almost soothing, and left a faint golden residue on his skin. But before he could examine it further, a deep, resonant growl echoed through the clearing. Zach froze. Slowly he turned his head, and there it was. The guardian beast stood at the edge of the grove, its golden eyes locked onto him. It looked larger than he remembered, its obsidian coat glinting in the fractured light of the crystals. "Hey there, big guy," Zach said softly, raising his hands in what he hoped was a non-threatening gesture. "We meet again." The beast stepped closer, its movements graceful despite its massive frame. It sniffed the air, then let out a low rumble that sent vibrations through the ground. Zach reached into his pack and pulled out another ration bar. "You liked this yesterday, remember? Peace offering, round 2. The creature hesitated, then padded forward, its claws clicking softly against the crystalline ground. It stopped just short of Zach and sniffed the bar. After a moment, it snapped it up, chewing noisily. Zach grinned. "That's right, you're just a good boy, aren't you?" The beast's tail twitched. It wasn't quite a wag, but it wasn't not a wag either. Encouraged, Zach took a risk. He extended his hand, palm up, and waited. For a long moment, the beast stared at him, its golden eyes unreadable. Then, to Zach's astonishment, it lowered its massive head and sniffed his hand. Its breath was warm, and its nose, if you could call it that, felt oddly dry. Before Zach could react, the beast nuzzled its palm with surprising gentleness. "See? We're pals now," Zach said, his voice tinged with wonder. He hesitated, then reached up to scratch behind one of the creature's ears. The beast froze, and Zach braced himself, wondering if he'd gone too far. But instead of attacking, the beast let out a sound that could only be described as a purr. Its tail began to wag in earnest, sweeping the ground behind it. "You've got to be kidding me," Zach said with a laugh. "You really are a good boy." Before he could celebrate his newfound friendship, a piercing screech split the air. Zach whipped around just in time to see a pack of reptilian predators, sleek, scaled creatures with serrated claws and glowing green eyes, burst into the clearing. They moved with terrifying speed, their intent clear. The guardian beast snarled, stepping protectively in front of Zach. Its golden eyes blazed with fury as it faced down the intruders. Zach scrambled to his feet, drawing his plasma machete, but the beast's growl stopped him. It wasn't a growl of anger. It was a growl of command. "Stay back." Zach hesitated, then obeyed, retreating to the edge of the grove as the beast charged. The ensuing battle was a blur of teeth, claws, and roars. The guardian beast moved with astonishing speed and precision, its tail lashing out like a whip and its claws slicing through the air. The predators fought back fiercely, but they were no match for the creature's raw power. Within minutes, it was over. The predators lay defeated, and the guardian beast stood victorious, its obsidian coat smeared with streaks of green blood. It turned back to Zach, its golden eyes softening as it approached him. "You saved me," Zach said, his voice hushed. "You didn't have to, but you did." The beast huffed, as if dismissing his gratitude, and nuzzled his shoulder. Zach laughed, patting its massive head. "You're not just a good boy, you're the best boy." For the first time in years, Zach felt a sense of awe, not just at the universe's wonders, but at the unlikely bond he'd formed with this magnificent creature. Whatever the Drevlith thought the guardian beast was, Zach knew the truth. It was his friend. Zach spent the rest of the day patching up the guardian beast's wounds. It had sustained several deep gashes during the fight with the reptilian predators, though the creature didn't seem to think much of them. Every time Zack leaned closer with his medkit, the beast would huff impatiently, as if saying, "I'm fine, human." Still, it allowed him to work, its massive frame unusually docile under his touch. "There we go," Zack said, finishing the last of his makeshift stitches on a particularly nasty wound near the beast's shoulder. "You're good as new. Well, mostly. I'm not exactly a vet." The beast rumbled softly, its golden eyes watching him with an intensity that bordered on unsettling. For a moment, Zack wondered if it understood more than he gave it credit for. "You're welcome," he said, patting its head. "Now, about those predators. Any chance they're a one-off problem?" The beast growled low, the sound reverberating through the grove. It glanced toward the jungle's edge, its tail flicking with tension. Clearly, the threat wasn't over. "Great," Zack muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "Looks like we've got company coming." He wasn't wrong. As night fell, the jungle came alive with unsettling sounds. Distant screeches, guttural snarls, and the rustling of underbrush kept Zack on edge. He and the beast sat near the crystalline pool, the faint glow of the water casting flickering shadows on the grove's ancient trees. Despite the tension, Zack couldn't help but feel a strange sense of security. Whatever was out there, his new companion would fight to protect him. "Ortana," Zack said quietly. "Run a scan. Any signs of movement nearby?" "Multiple thermal signatures detected," the AI replied. "Approximately 12 individuals moving in a coordinated pattern toward your location." Zack sighed, gripping his plasma machete. "I was afraid of that." The beast rose to its feet, its obsidian coat shimmering in the moonlight. It let out a low, guttural growl, its golden eyes scanning the darkness. Zack stood beside it, feeling both absurdly brave and wildly unprepared. "I hope you've got a plan," he muttered to the creature. As if in response, the beast nudged him with its massive head, pushing him toward a nearby tree with roots so thick they formed a natural shelter. "Wait, you want me to hide?" Zack asked, incredulous. "No way. If you're fighting, I'm fighting." The beast growled again, this time sharper, more insistent. It nudged him harder, nearly knocking him off his feet. "Fine, fine," Zack relented, ducking under the roots. "But don't get yourself killed, you hear me?" The beast snorted, then turned to face the approaching threat. Zack crouched low, gripping his machete tightly as he watched through a gap in the roots. The predators emerged from the jungle like shadows made flesh. There were more of them this time. Sleek, sinewy creatures with glowing green eyes and serrated claws that gleamed in the dim light. They spread out in a loose circle, surrounding the grove with chilling precision. The guardian beast let out a roar that shook the ground. It charged, its massive frame a blur of black and gold as it collided with the first predator. Claws slashed, teeth snapped, and the grove became a cacophony of violence. Zack's heart pounded as he watched. The beast fought with the ferocity of a storm, but the predators were relentless. One leapt onto its back, sinking its teeth into the thick hide near the beast's neck. Another darted in from the side, claws raking across its flank. "I can't just sit here," Zack muttered. Ignoring the beast's earlier command, he scrambled out of his hiding spot and sprinted into the fray. "Hey, you overgrown lizards," he shouted, waving his machete. "Come get me!" Several of the predators turned, their glowing eyes narrowing as they sized him up. Zack's stomach churned, but he held his ground. "That's right. I'm tasty. I promise." One of the creatures lunged at him, its claws flashing. Zack dodged to the side and swung his machete, the plasma edge slicing cleanly through the predator's foreleg. It howled in pain, retreating into the shadows. Not so tough now, huh? Zach taunted, though his hands were shaking. The distraction was enough to shift the tide of the battle. The guardian beast surged forward, its massive jaws snapping down on one predator's neck with a sickening crunch. It swiped another with its claws, sending it flying into a crystalline pillar that shattered on impact. Within minutes, the remaining predators fled, their screeches fading into the jungle. The grove fell silent once more, save for the heavy breathing of the guardian beast. Zach approached cautiously. "You okay, big guy?" The beast turned to him, its golden eyes narrowing. For a moment, Zach thought it was angry, but then it nuzzled his chest, nearly knocking him over. Yeah, Zach said with a laugh, patting its head. "You're welcome, though, let's be honest, you did most of the work." The beast rumbled softly, a sound that almost resembled a chuckle. It sat down heavily, licking its wounds with surprising delicacy. Zach collapsed onto the ground beside it, his legs trembling. "Okay, new rule. Next time you tell me to hide, I'll, think about it." The beast huffed, its tail sweeping the ground in what Zach could only interpret as amusement. Despite the exhaustion, he felt a strange sense of contentment. They'd faced the danger together, and they'd won. A Europa, a lotus in the Oregon drain, a Uruguay. "Cordana," he said, leaning back against a tree. "Log this in the mission report. Subject successfully befriends guardian beast, also nearly gets eaten by space lizards." "Log updated," the AI replied dryly. "I recommend avoiding future engagements with predators." Zach grinned, glancing at the beast. "Nah, we've got this. Right, buddy?" The beast tilted its head, then let out a soft growl. It was the closest thing to agreement Zach could have hoped for. The next morning, the grove was still, bathed in the golden glow of the crystalline pool and the soft light filtering through the canopy. Zach woke to find the guardian beast lying nearby, its head resting on its massive paws, breathing slow and steady. Its wounds, though still visible, seemed to have closed significantly overnight. "You heal fast," Zach murmured, stretching his sore limbs. "Jealous, honestly." The beast cracked one golden eye open and gave a low rumble of acknowledgement, its tail thumping once against the ground. Zach chuckled, reaching out to scratch the creature behind its ear. "You're starting to enjoy this, huh? Big, scary jungle god reduced to a giant lapdog." The beast's growl deepened, but there was no mistaking the wag of its tail. Zach stood, brushing dirt off his pants, and surveyed the grove. He had come to Vexar Prime, chasing rumors of a terrifying monster, only to find, well, this. A companion, a protector, a friend. "All right, Cortana," Zach said, pulling out his datapad. "Let's finish up the survey. What do we need to wrap this mission?" "Primary objectives have been met," the AI replied. "However, a comprehensive scan of the grove could provide valuable data for future research." Zach nodded. "Got it. Let's scan and head back to camp. No offense, big guy," he added, glancing at the beast, "but I'm ready for a meal that doesn't come out of a foil packet." The beast tilted its head as if curious about his words. Then it stood, stretching its massive frame, and began to follow him as he moved through the grove. It stayed close, its golden eyes scanning the surroundings, with a vigilance that made Zach feel safer than any weapon ever could. As Zach conducted his scans, he couldn't help but notice how the beast seemed to understand his actions. When he paused to study a crystalline formation, the creature sat beside him, its tail flicking lazily. When he moved to the pool, it followed, standing watch like a sentry. "You're really sticking with me, huh?" Zach said, lowering the scanner. The beast huffed in response, nudging his shoulder with its snout. Zach laughed, scratching the beast's chin. "Fine. You're officially part of the crew. I just hope the survey team doesn't freak out when I bring you back." The thought of introducing the guardian beast to his colleagues was both amusing and daunting. Would they even believe him? Or would they think he'd lost his mind? "Ortana," Zack said, a sudden idea sparking. "Let's start thinking about a name for our new friend." The AI hesitated. Naming the guardian beast would be highly unorthodox. Yeah, but calling him Guardian Beast feels too formal. He needs something snappier, like Rex or Titan, maybe Shadow. The beast growled softly, its tail swishing. Zack grinned. "All right, Shadow it is. You like that, buddy?" Shadow rumbled in what Zack could only describe as approval. The name felt right, a nod to the creature's sleek, dark appearance and the way it moved through the jungle like a living shadow. With the scans complete, Zack packed up his equipment and prepared to head back to his camp. Shadow stayed by his side, his massive frame a comforting presence as they retraced their steps through the dense undergrowth. Despite the challenges of the journey, Zack found himself humming a tune under his breath, his spirits lifted by the strange and wonderful bond he had formed with the creature. As they neared the camp, a distant noise caught Zack's attention. It was faint at first, a low, mechanical hum, but it grew louder with each passing moment. "Ortana," Zack said, his tone wary. "What's that sound?" "An unidentified aerial vehicle is approaching from the east," the AI replied. "Signature matches standard Drevlith transport." Drevlith? Zack frowned. The locals had been elusive during his time on the planet, avoiding direct contact. Why would they be coming here now? Moments later, the source of the noise came into view. A sleek, insect-like craft hovering above the treetops. It descended slowly, landing in a clearing just ahead of them. A group of Drevlith emerged, their tall, wiry forms clad in shimmering robes. Their 4 eyes glinted in the sunlight as they approached, their movements precise and deliberate. Shadow stiffened, his growl low and menacing. Zack placed a hand on the beast's neck, trying to calm him. "Easy, boy. Let's see what they want." The Drevlith leader stepped forward, holding a long staff adorned with glowing crystals. Its voice was melodic, but firm, as it spoke in its native tongue. "Ortana, translation," Zack said. "Translation initialized," the AI replied. The Drevlith representative says, "Human, you have trespassed in sacred lands and bonded with the guardian beast. Explain yourself." Zack winced. "Right. Sacred lands. My bad." The Drevlith leader tilted its head, clearly unimpressed. "The guardian beast is a protector, a divine entity. It does not bond. It obeys no one." "Yeah, about that," Zack said, gesturing to Shadow, who was now sitting calmly by his side. "I think we've got a bit of a special case here. He's, kind of my friend now." The Drevlith exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outrage. The leader raised its staff, its voice sharp. "This is impossible. The guardian beast does not lower itself to companionship. It exists to protect the balance." "Well," Zack said, scratching the back of his neck, "maybe he just needed a buddy. Ever think of that?" Shadow chose that moment to nuzzle Zack's shoulder, his tail wagging slightly. The Drevliths froze, their 4 eyes widening in unison. This cannot be," the leader said, its voice trembling. "The guardian beast has chosen you?" Zack shrugged. "Looks like it." The Drevliths stared at him for a long moment, then lowered their staff. "If the guardian beast has deemed you worthy, we cannot interfere. But know this, human. You now share its responsibility. Protect this jungle, this planet, as it has done for centuries." Zack blinked. Wait, I'm responsible for the whole planet now? That wasn't in the job description. The leader ignored his protest, gesturing to its companions. They returned to their craft, their movements swift and efficient. Moments later, the vehicle ascended into the sky, disappearing over the treetops. Zack turned to Shadow, who was watching him with a look that could only be described as smug. "Great," Zack said, throwing up his hands. "We're planetary protectors now. Hope you're ready for that, buddy." Shadow rumbled softly, his tail wagging. Despite the absurdity of the situation, Zack couldn't help but smile. He'd come to Vexor Prime looking for adventure, and he'd found something far greater, a friend, a bond, and a responsibility he hadn't expected. As they made their way back to camp, Zack glanced at Shadow and said, "You're not just a good boy, Shadow. You're the best boy." The beast let out a soft growl of agreement, and together they vanished into the jungle, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.